Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in this edition of To The Point. Today, we will be discussing a very important topic, the important visit by Russia's top diplomat, the Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, to Egypt, where he met with His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. He also met with his counterpart, Minister Sameh Shoukry, and he also met with Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Gheit. We will be discussing the political as well as the economic importance of this visit and its implications. We will be discussing also Egypt's role in the Ukrainian Russian crisis, and this will be with our guest today, Engineer Hassan Shaban. He is the political analyst and former chairman of the Farmers Syndicate. Thank you very much, Engineer Shaban, for joining us in this edition of To The Point.
Appreciate it.
Now, on Sunday, Sergei Lavrov arrived to Egypt and he held talks with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and with Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry. Let's start with the importance of the visit at this particular time.
This visit is extremely important, actually. The timing of the visit is right after the American Arab Summit meeting in Jeddah. And I think Egypt is playing a very important role now in the Middle East, along with our brothers in the Gulf. I think the issue of the Ukrainian Russian war is a war that everybody was affected due to the ramifications of this war. But again, we are taking a very neutral stand in this particular issue because we understand the point of view of the Russians, and we think that you know, the Ukrainians should be wise enough to actually reason and try to understand that their political point of view in joining the NATO might be really not a very wise decision, actually. I don't think the U.S. is being fair to Russia, because all of us remember in the 60s, during the era of Khrushchev, when the Russians actually mobilized missiles to Cuba, and the U.S. opposed to this mobilization of Russian missiles in Cuba, and Cuba actually complied with the American requirements, and actually the Russians withdrew their missiles from Cuba because it actually formed a certain threat to the U.S. Well, the same thing is happening now in the Ukrainian-Russian issue. The joining of Ukraine to the NATO actually is an issue. While everybody's looking forward peace worldwide, I think this is a very hostile move toward Russia, actually. There is no point really in trying to join NATO at this particular time, and I think the whole world is being dragged to a war where actually this war actually could develop to a third world war, actually, if somebody was not wise enough. I mean, who knows who will push the red button by mistake and cause a catastrophic issue somewhere. So actually, I think Egypt and the Arab countries are in a position to play a very positive role in the issue of trying to bring peace to the Ukrainian and the Ukrainian-Russian issue.
Yes, and we will discuss this and elaborate on it as we mentioned the statements of Lavrov and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi following their meeting. But the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also discussed with President al-Sisi and Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry at the outset of his wider African tour. The trip to Egypt aims to ease Russia's diplomatic isolation amid the war in Ukraine. How do you see this move by Russia by trying to ease its isolation?
Well, actually, the Russians actually had this successful meeting in Turkey a week ago. The three parties, the United Nations, Russia and Turkey, actually agreed that it will ease the shipments of grain and wheat out of Odessa. And I think this is a very positive role, actually, to ease a little bit the political environment. I think also the Arab League is actually also playing a positive role in this issue, and they actually are trying to help diffuse the bomb in the Ukrainian-Russian issue.
Yes.
I think Russia is being positive, and I think the Russians appreciate that the Arabs could play a role in this crisis. Also, you have to put in mind that the Arabs are the major producer of oil in the whole world. Russia is also an oil producer. So actually, the coordination between Arabs and Russia in the field of oil production is very important, because we don't want Russia to be hurt, but we don't want as well our economy to be hurt. So it's a win-win situation. We need to respect the interest of the Russians, and we also have to be very careful, because we are playing politics right now.
And that's the main point, because this is what President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi reiterated following his meeting with Lavrov. He said that he underscored actually the importance of prioritizing dialogue and diplomatic solutions to settle the Russian-Ukrainian war, voicing Egypt's support for all the endeavors that would speed up the political settlement to the crisis. And this is actually what you told me now, because this is only part of Egypt's efforts to go for the peaceful settlement, for dialogue, give a chance for dialogue. Now, President al-Sisi made these remarks during his meeting with Lavrov in Al-Ittihadiyya presidential palace, and the president stressed to Lavrov Egypt's readiness to support the dialogue and diplomatic path via its international contacts. With all the active forces, whether through bilateral or multilateral framework. That was the statement of the presidential spokesperson Bassam Radi following the meeting. How do you read this statement?
Well, I think Egypt is really, I think we're, as a whole actually, I think the Arab leaders are maturing. We're playing really politics. And I think the return of our politics will be, we will have an economical return for this very wise politics. I think after the President Biden meeting in Saudi with the Arab leaders, I think the U.S. government should really recalculate their position and evaluate their politics toward the Middle East as well as Europe. Because I think what's happening is Europe is being dragged to a war that have no meaning for all the people in Europe, actually. There is a conflict that I have to to clarify for you. Actually, all of the governments in Europe are bound by NATO agreement. While the people think that there is no need for such ties with the NATO, and they feel that they're being dragged to a war that they can do without. The same thing in the Middle East, actually. We do not think that this is that we have an issue in the Middle East that requires violence. And a matter of fact, the American president stopped in Israel before he actually arrived to Saudi. And I think the American president had an impression that he could, I don't want to say dictate things to the Arab leaders, but again, I think the Arab leaders already took steps to show good intentions toward Israel. And that was right ahead of the visit in the United Arab Emirates and in Saudi. But again, there was nothing in return from Israel toward the positive moves of the Arabs. So I think the Americans should play a wiser role in the Middle East, reevaluate their politics in the area. And I think sincerely the Arabs could play a role in resolving the conflict in between Russia and Ukraine.
Actually, recently Egypt, in coordination with the Arab League, formed a Ukrainian crisis liaison group that held meetings with Russian and Ukrainian officials, with the aim of achieving a diplomatic solution to end the crisis. And consequently, Lavrov conveyed to President Sisi a message of appreciation from Russian President Vladimir Putin for the Egyptian initiative to form the liaison group. Now, the importance of this group, in your own opinion?
Well, we're playing politics. I mean, we know how strong we are today and how effective we are as Arabs, actually. And I think we are a surprise group on the political arena, because normally the United Nations play a role, some neutral countries play a role, but for the first time, the Arabs are getting involved in resolving an international crisis that actually, if we succeed in playing this role, we will have a lot of credit from the international.
And economic benefits.
Exactly. Well, and in my opinion, as a politician, all the political moves that doesn't have a successful and fruitful economic
gains are meaningless. Of course. The meeting also tackled a host of bilateral issues within the framework of cooperation ties that bind Egypt and Russia, especially in the fields of grain and food supply, as well as oil and gas sector, in light of the current crisis, as you mentioned now. Sir, you are a political analyst and former vice chairman of the Farmers Syndicate. How do you see, in accordance to your title, how do you see the importance of this particular issue, the issue of grains, wheat, and oil?
Well, to be honest with you, I think the relationship between Egypt and Russia on all these fields should be actually developed, especially in agriculture. As a farmer and as a former vice chairman of, for the syndicate of the farmers, I will mention something that could be beneficial for both countries. Actually, Russia was or still one of the main importers of our potato crop in Egypt. The issue is Egypt do not produce the seeds for these potatoes. It requires a very cold climate or cooling factors to produce these seeds that could be used in growing potato.
I didn't know that.
Yes, this is the problem, because this is why we do not produce our own seeds. We get it from other countries.
Okay.
But as we export potatoes in like 500,000 tons to Russia, I propose to join efforts to produce these seeds in Siberia, which is a natural fridge.
Yes.
You know, a group of our scientists and engineers could join hands with the Russian experts and produce the seeds in Siberia, which is a cold place by nature. Doesn't really require more cooling than that. Okay? And we get the seeds from there, grow it in Egypt, and then we export it to Russia and other countries. I think this is a win-win situation, and I hope it could be considered in the future. And nevertheless, I think we import a lot of our wheat from Ukraine and from Russia. And you see, even the agreement that was reached in Turkey a week ago in allowing the Ukrainian wheat to be exported to other countries was respected, but Russia complained because they were not treated in the same way. There is a siege in front of the Russian ports, and it prevents the Russians from exporting their wheat as well. So I think the whole thing requires a lot of wisdom, diplomacy, and you know, and I don't think this is not a meaningful war, actually. I think the whole world is being dragged to a war. I think Europe will pay a very dear price if this war continues more than this, actually.
Yes. Sir, also the meeting tackled means of boosting bilateral ties within the framework of strategic partnership between Egypt and Russia through the ongoing joint development projects. And President Sisi praised the level of cooperation between Cairo and Moscow, especially through Russia's projects in Egypt, including the Daba project, Egypt's first nuclear power plant to generate electricity, and the Russian industrial zone in the Suez Canal economic zone. How do you see it?
Well, I think these two major projects, actually, the Daba project is definitely will be one of a kind, because this is our first nuclear plant that we construct in Egypt, and I think it will be a role model to the countries in the area, especially countries that produce even oil, because they would like to diversify the way they produce electricity. They don't want to depend only on gas or oil. They would like to use nuclear power, use solar energy, and so forth. So I think both of these projects, the industrial zone in the Suez Canal area that the Russians will actually develop, will be very beneficial to both countries, because I think the technology that the Russians will bring to the area, and we would like to enter a new era by really modernizing our industry, and I think the Russians will be good partners for Egypt, actually.
Yes. Lavrov also met with Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Gheit and addressed members of the organization the importance of his meeting with the Secretary General Ahmed Abul Gheit.
I think this is a continuation to what happened, actually, to the group of foreign ministers that visited, actually, Russia and Ukraine to try to resolve the issue. I think the talks between Mr. Ahmed Abul Gheit and Lavrov actually was a continuation to this visit, or to discuss the results of this visit. And I think the Arab League president will take, I think, a very firm and serious stand, because the Arab League could score a lot of points if we manage to really resolve this issue.
Yes. Lavrov also met his Egyptian counterpart, Foreign Minister Samah Abul Ghait, and they discussed the food supply, the surging energy prices. How do you read their meeting?
Well, I think they discussed more than this as well. I think
this is only part of their discussions.
Yes, because I think, of course, you know, the food
they
supply.
discussed, of course, issues of mutual concern. And
because actually, the trip that the foreign minister, the Russian foreign minister, took after that to Somalia and the the countries, the Nile Basin countries, I think it have a meaning. I think Russia will try to play a positive role in resolving
the Renaissance dam.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Sir, both President Sisi and Foreign Minister Shukri stressed in meetings with Lavrov their country's ties to Russia, but also the wish to see political resolution to the crisis in Ukraine. Shukri referred to the impact of the Russian war on global food security, saying that the crisis has taken its toll on Egypt's food supply and energy prices.
Exactly. You know, this is, nobody really expected this amount of pressure that this war could apply on the food chain, actually. And it turned that the Ukraine is a food basket for the world,
Yes.
actually. So actually, I think this war revealed a lot of weak points, and I think in the future...
and strength points as well.
Right.
We have to say.
Right.
Now, the fact that Russia used its currency
Exactly. Instead of using the dollar,
this
actually,
is
this is really a major thing, a major move, actually, and I think you know, the Arab countries that actually the producing oil Arab countries actually are watching this very carefully because in the past all the Arab attempts to get away from the dollar as a currency that that being used to buy oil and gas was a failure. Especially what happened to Saddam Hussein in Iraq or the Libyan president in Libya. All of these past leaders actually tried to weasel out of the American dollar, but again, it did not work out. And I think the Arabs finally realized that, I think this is my humble opinion, that indeed the dollar doesn't have a gold reserve to cover the dollar, but the Americans are using the oil reserves in the Arab oil reserves as a reserve or actually a support for the dollar.
Final support.
Exactly, for the dollar.
Final support
right,
for the dollar. And the euro also fell to the dollar. Actually, this war had so many impacts on...
Exactly. It actually revealed a lot of things, and I think after this war, a lot of countries will be very busy rectifying the weak points in their economies.
In their economies,
right.
Exactly. Lavrov and Shukri also addressed the impact of the war in Ukraine on the, as we mentioned, the global food security. And the thing is, Lavrov stressed that Russia is committed to fulfilling its grain export obligations as per the recent UN broker deal that it signed with Kiev on Friday. How do you read this? Because the deal should unblock the shipment of grain from Ukrainian ports stalled since Russia invaded Ukraine.
This is what I said. Yes, indeed, this agreement actually was respected by the Russians, but again, it did not really work for both sides. Actually, some of the shipments from the Ukrainian side started to leave the Odessa, but the Russian shipments were blocked due to the seizure from the Black Sea. Yes.
Yes, the sanctions.
So I think the sanctions should actually be lifted. So the Russians should be able to export their goods as well as the Ukrainians. This is fair enough, I mean.
Yes. Mr. Shaban, the Russian minister also brought up the Western sanctions that we are discussing imposed on his country, calling on the West to refrain from its sanctions in the face of the food crisis. To what extent could this move help in ending the war?
I think the European community actually represented in governments have a problem. You know, I think the sound of wisdom actually I would accept what the Russians have said. And I think the whole war is a menagerie actually. This war is something that Europe is being dragged to, and I don't think this war is important to Europe, and I think if this war takes a longer time than this, we will see local problems in a lot of European countries because within 2 months we will be approaching winter, and I don't think that the people in Europe will appreciate very much this cold winter without really the gas and oil supply from Russia, the food supplies from Ukraine. The Ukrainians have 20 million tons of wheat in their ports and silos is ready to be shipped. Unless really somebody will take a firm stand and allow the Russians and the Ukrainians to export their wheat, I think a lot of countries will be very much affected. Yes.
Of course. The thing is, many political analysts believe that the war is not going to end soon. They don't see any prospects for the crisis to end soon. And as you mentioned, in a few months we'll be approaching the winter, which will have a huge impact on so many Western countries. The solution, or your view as a political analyst, do you think that with all these efforts taking place, the war could be over soon?
I think the Ukrainian president have most of the cards in his hand, and I think being patriotic and loyal to his country, I don't think that joining the NATO even will be that important to Ukraine after the massive destructions that have taken place. In my opinion, I think the Russians could have taken Ukraine in 10 days maximum. And I think the delay in the invasion of Ukraine was intentioned by the Russians to give a chance to the Ukrainians to decide
to pull back from
right.
This decision.
It's just a small, simple declaration from.
That's why Russian President Vladimir Putin did not call it a war. He called it a military operation.
It is a military operation to the Russians because everybody thought that the Russians could take Ukraine within a few hours, but again, the supply of arms from the West, and somebody is trying to add
keep
fuel
the blaze going.
Yeah, exactly. Add fuel to the blaze, and just I don't think that this is beneficial to the rest of the world. I think it's not very wise, and this is not a meaningful war. Actually, it's just as I said, it's a menagerie. It's not really a war that deserves that anybody dies for.
Actually, to reiterate what we are discussing, Lavrov said that Ukraine was to blame for the failure of earlier peace talks, and he accused Ukrainian authorities, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, of stressing that there will be no negotiations until Ukraine defeats Russia on the battlefield. How do you read this?
This is, absurd. I think this is the Ukrainian president's prolonging the war for no good reason actually, and his country is paying a very dear price for a causeless, actually, issue. Actually, I don't think that joining the NATO is that important to the Ukrainian people, and I don't think that the NATO is, is treating Russia in a fair way. They have to remember the Cuban crisis some time ago, and I don't think the whole world is doesn't really appreciate this war at all. It's not a good war, and it doesn't have.
It took its toll on everyone,
right,
basically,
right.
Economically, mainly, and everyone felt the impact of the war.
And I think Russia will come out, winning a lot of friends and support, and the visit that the foreign prime minister made to East Africa, Somalia, and all these countries, and showing appreciation to their food requirement, I think it's very much appreciated. Some other countries really did not really do the same thing. I mean, Africa will actually have a very strong relationship with the Russians after that.
This is your
Yes.
expectations,
Right.
in what way, Mr. Shaban?
I think...
Is it from an agricultural, economic point of view?
Yes, actually I think the petrodollar with the Russian expertise will actually Africa will be the field for this cooperation, actually. Already the Chinese are there.
Yes.
And I think the Russians could come up with an idea to resolve, for instance, the Renaissance Dam issue by creating other projects that will, hold
Achieve
the surplus,
development.
right, surplus water that goes to the Gulf of Aden, and everybody will come, come out of this as a winner. So I think it's about time to our friends in the U.S. to recalculate and review their policies in the Middle East. I will, adopt what President Trump said. Hamada's yesterday is not today's Hamada. It's another Hamada. I think the Arabs today require another policy, that the U.S. should follow.
Yes. I'd like to thank you very much, Engineer Hassan Shaban, a political analyst and former vice chairman of the Farmers Syndicate. It was a pleasure having this interview with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in this edition of To The Point. I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi signing off for now.